Have you ever witnessed an act of sacrifice so profound it redefined everything you believed about animal compassion, where life and death collided in a moment that revealed the depths of interspecies love? Deep in Sri Lanka's wilderness, a woman's terrifying encounter with deadly pythons would trigger an elephant's response so heartbreaking, so selfless, that it challenged everything experts thought they knew about the emotional bonds possible between humans and the gentle giants who share our world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Deep within Sri Lanka's Yala National Park, where ancient monsoon forests stretch endlessly toward the Indian Ocean's sapphire horizon, lies one of South Asia's most pristine wilderness sanctuaries. This UNESCO-protected ecosystem encompasses thousands of square kilometers of untouched jungle, where towering palu trees create living cathedrals beneath canopies so dense that sunlight penetrates in scattered golden beams. The forest floor pulses with life, carpeted in decomposing leaves that release the rich, earthy scent of centuries-old growth cycles, feeding this incredible biodiversity hotspot. Crystal-clear lagoons wind through valleys wrapped in perpetual humidity, their gentle flow mixing with the haunting calls of peacocks and the distant trumpeting of Asian elephants navigating ancient migration routes. Massive strangler figs create natural fortresses where countless species find sanctuary, while delicate wild orchids bloom in impossible colors along branches that have supported life for millennia. But Yala also harbors secrets that challenge our understanding of the bonds possible between different species. This is a place where the impossible becomes reality, where ancient evolutionary barriers dissolve in moments of extraordinary crisis. In these mystical depths, where elephants and humans have coexisted for generations, the most unlikely acts of heroism can emerge when witnessing suffering becomes unbearable, even for creatures whose own survival hangs in the balance. What was about to unfold in this pristine wilderness would prove that sometimes the most profound acts of love require the ultimate sacrifice, demonstrating that the bonds between species can transcend every instinct for self-preservation. This was a story that would challenge fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and moral complexity, revealing that compassion knows no evolutionary boundaries when innocent lives face mortal danger. The extraordinary events that were about to transform both human and elephant would prove that in nature's most desperate moments, heroes emerge with the courage to risk everything for others. But what happened when maternal instincts collided with deadly predators, the heartbreaking sacrifice that would leave everyone speechless, would reveal depths of elephant love that would forever change how we understand these gentle giants. This is where our story begins, in a place where courage meets compassion, and where one elephant's love would break every heart that witnessed it. Working in the heart of Sri Lanka's conservation frontlines was Dr. Priya Rajapaksa, a Sri Lankan wildlife veterinarian whose 10-year mission to protect the island's endangered elephant population had earned her both international recognition and the deep respect of local communities who viewed her as a guardian of their natural heritage. Standing just over 5 feet with gentle hands that bore countless scars from treating injured elephants, her dark eyes reflected the accumulated wisdom of someone who had dedicated her life to understanding the complex emotional lives of these magnificent creatures. Dr. Rajapaksa operated from a mobile research station that served as both elephant monitoring center and emergency medical facility, equipped with specialized tracking equipment alongside traditional veterinary supplies. Her fluent command of Sinhala and Tamil had allowed her to work closely with rural communities whose lives intertwined with elephant migration routes, creating conservation programs that protected both human and animal interests. But it was her personal connection to individual elephants that truly defined her mission. Having spent years studying elephant family dynamics, Dr. Rajapaksa understood that these creatures possessed emotional complexity rivaling human relationships, making every conservation victory personal, and every loss a profound tragedy that challenged her dedication to continue the dangerous work. Just 2 kilometers from Dr. Rajapaksa's research station lived Siri, a 35-year-old female Asian elephant whose name meant blessing in Sinhala, a fitting tribute to her role as matriarch of a small family group that had learned to coexist peacefully with human settlements. Standing nearly 9 feet tall and weighing over 4 tons, Siri's imposing frame was balanced by remarkably gentle eyes that reflected the wisdom of decades spent protecting her family through Sri Lanka's increasingly fragmented wilderness. Siri's family included her teenage daughter Kira and her elderly sister Mala, whose advancing age had made the matriarch increasingly protective of their small group's safety. The family had established territory along the boundary between Yala National Park and agricultural settlements, creating a delicate balance that required constant vigilance against both natural predators and human encroachment. This profound protective instinct, honed through years of safeguarding her family against countless threats, would prove crucial to the heartbreaking sacrifice about to unfold, an event that would demonstrate the depths of elephant love and the ultimate price some are willing to pay to protect those they consider family. Hond Famatir. That humid Thursday afternoon settled peacefully over Yala's pristine wilderness, with golden sunlight filtering through layers of emerald foliage as Dr. Rajapaksa conducted her weekly elephant family monitoring survey through the park's ancient migration corridors. Her mobile research station hummed quietly along dusty trails carved through dense jungle, the familiar sounds of forest life creating a symphony that had become the soundtrack to her conservation mission. The veterinarian had settled into her routine observation schedule with the methodical precision of someone whose work had become both profession and calling. Her weathered hands guided the steering wheel with practiced ease while her trained eyes scanned the forest edges for signs of elephant activity, water sources, and potential human-wildlife conflict zones that required ongoing monitoring. These afternoon surveys had become sacred ritual, moments of calm immersion in the natural world that reminded her why elephant conservation was worth the personal risks and professional challenges that defined her daily existence. The peaceful rhythm of documenting family behaviors, health assessments, and territorial patterns provided essential data while offering profound insights into the emotional complexity of elephant society. 2 kilometers deeper into the park, Siri's family had settled into their preferred afternoon routine beneath a massive banyan tree, where the ancient giant's sprawling canopy provided perfect shade while offering clear sightlines across their territory. The matriarch positioned herself strategically where she could monitor both her family's safety and the forest pathways that elephants had used for generations. Young Kira practiced foraging techniques under her mother's patient guidance, while elderly Mala rested in the shade, her advanced age requiring longer recovery periods between the physical demands of daily survival in increasingly fragmented habitat. Their gentle, rumbling communications created a soundtrack of familial contentment that embodied everything beautiful about elephant social bonds. The forest soundscape was quintessentially Sri Lankan. The melodic calls of paradise flycatchers echoing through the canopy, the distant splash of spotted deer at hidden water sources, and the gentle rustle of leaves as countless creatures went about their afternoon routines in perfect harmony with their environment. It was the kind of perfect afternoon that represented the timeless rhythm of life in Yala, a moment of pure tranquility that neither Dr. Rajapaksa nor Siri's family could know was about to be shattered by events that would test the very limits of interspecies love. On Kirkbed, Dr. Rajapaksa's peaceful afternoon survey was suddenly shattered by sounds that made her conservation instincts explode into high alert, desperate human screams cutting through the jungle silence with the unmistakable tone of mortal terror. The cries were coming from the dense undergrowth near the ancient rock formations, approximately 300 meters from the main trail, where no tourist should have been traveling without guides. The screams continued in frantic bursts, growing more desperate and weaker with each passing moment, speaking of someone facing overwhelming danger with no possibility of escape or rescue. Dr. Rajapaksa's 10 years of wilderness experience had taught her to distinguish between normal distress calls and genuine life-threatening emergencies, and what she was hearing fell squarely into the latter category. Following the heartbreaking sounds with growing determination and horror, she abandoned her vehicle and began moving carefully through the undergrowth toward what was clearly a crisis unfolding in one of the park's most remote and dangerous areas. The screams were becoming more sporadic and weaker, indicating that whatever was happening was reaching a critical phase where intervention needed to occur immediately or not at all. As Dr. Rajapaksa pushed through the dense vegetation, additional sounds began filtering through the humid air that made her blood freeze with recognition, the distinctive hissing and movement patterns of large pythons in active hunting mode. These weren't the sounds of snakes avoiding human contact, but the aggressive vocalizations of predators that had cornered prey and were in the process of subduing it. Through gaps in the foliage, she began to catch glimpses of a clearing ahead where the rock formations created natural amphitheater, surrounded by dense jungle. The screams were definitely coming from that direction, mixed now with sounds that suggested a prolonged struggle between human and serpent that could only end in tragedy without immediate intervention. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dr. Rajapaksa found herself facing an impossible decision that challenged everything about her role as wildlife researcher versus emergency responder. The logical choice was to radio for backup and maintain safe distance from what sounded like multiple large pythons in aggressive feeding behavior. But the increasingly weak human cries indicated that waiting for professional rescue would mean certain death for whoever was trapped in the clearing ahead. Every second of hesitation could mean the difference between successful rescue and becoming witness to preventable tragedy. As Dr. Rajapaksa crept through the final barrier of dense vegetation, the scene that greeted her was every wilderness researcher's worst nightmare. There, trapped in the center of the rocky clearing, was a young Western tourist, a woman in her 20s, whose hiking clothes were torn and muddy from what must have been a terrifying struggle for survival against impossible odds. Coiled around the woman's legs and torso were two massive Indian rock pythons, each easily 15 feet in length and thick as telephone poles. The serpent's diamond-patterned scales gleamed with muscular power as their coils tightened methodically around their victim, whose desperate struggles were growing weaker with each labored breath. The pythons moved with the calculated patience of apex predators who understood that time was their greatest weapon. What made the scene even more horrifying was the woman's obvious exhaustion and the evidence of how long this attack had been progressing. Her face showed the cyanotic pallor of oxygen deprivation, while her increasingly faint cries indicated that the python's crushing pressure was systematically shutting down her respiratory system. The snakes had positioned themselves with tactical precision, one controlling her lower body while the other worked its way toward her chest and throat. The tourist's camera equipment lay scattered around the clearing, suggesting she had been photographing the rock formations when the ambush occurred. These ancient pythons were known to use the cooling shade of the rocks as hunting grounds, lying in wait for unsuspecting prey that ventured too close to their concealed positions. Dr. Rajapaksa could see that the snakes were employing the methodical killing strategy that made pythons among nature's most efficient predators, maintaining steady pressure until their victim could no longer draw breath, then beginning the slow process of consumption that could take hours to complete. The woman's struggles were becoming increasingly desperate and uncoordinated as oxygen deprivation began affecting her neurological responses. Most devastating was the isolation of the attack site. The rocky clearing was surrounded by dense jungle that muffled sound and concealed the struggle from potential rescuers. These pythons had chosen their hunting ground, with the evolutionary wisdom of predators who had perfected ambush tactics over millions of years. Time was running out rapidly, and Dr. Rajapaksa realized she was witnessing the final moments of attack that had been progressing for what must have been nearly 20 minutes. The sight before her triggered something profound within Dr. Rajapaksa's consciousness, an emotional response that transcended her professional training and reached directly into her most basic human instincts for protecting innocent life. The trapped woman's increasingly weak struggles and desperate eyes seemed to plead for help that conventional wildlife protocols said she couldn't provide without endangering herself and potentially making the situation worse. Standing at the edge of the clearing, Dr. Rajapaksa found herself facing an impossible tactical situation that went far beyond her expertise as elephant researcher. Two 15-foot pythons represented formidable opponents, even for multiple armed rescuers with specialized equipment. Their crushing coils could easily break human bones, and their lightning-fast defensive strikes could deliver devastating injuries to anyone attempting intervention without proper tools or backup. More critically, any aggressive approach might cause the serpents to tighten their grip fatally, ending the woman's life in seconds rather than the minutes that remained if the constrictive pressure continued at its current pace. Dr. Rajapaksa's veterinary training told her that the victim was already showing advanced signs of respiratory distress that indicated very little time remained before irreversible damage occurred. Yet something deeper than logic was driving her response. The trapped woman's obvious terror, and the knowledge that she was witnessing preventable death, was triggering protective responses that had nothing to do with professional obligations, and everything to do with basic human decency and moral courage. The most devastating aspect of the situation was her complete lack of equipment or backup suitable for python rescue operations. Her mobile research station contained elephant medical supplies and communication equipment, but nothing designed for confronting multiple large constrictors in active feeding behavior. Her satellite phone might not penetrate the dense canopy effectively enough to summon help that could arrive in time. Dr. Rajapaksa found herself crossing a psychological boundary that separated professional wildlife observation from personal moral intervention. The sight of the woman's systematic suffocation and her increasingly weak pleas for help was triggering responses she couldn't ignore, even if action meant risking everything she had built in 10 years of conservation work. Every second of hesitation meant continued suffering for someone who had already endured far more than any person should have to bear, and rescue seemed impossible without help that might not arrive in time. Huljindo, Dr. Rajapaksa transformed from passive observer to active catalyst when she made a desperate decision that abandoned every protocol in wildlife emergency response. She began calling out in distress, not to the trapped woman or the pythons, but to the forest itself, hoping against hope that her years of studying elephant communication might somehow reach the family she knew inhabited this territory. Her voice carried across the jungle in patterns she had learned from decades of elephant research, the specific alarm calls that matriarchs used to alert their families to mortal danger. Dr. Rajapaksa had never attempted to use human vocalizations to communicate with wild elephants, but desperation drove her to try every possibility, no matter how scientifically improbable. Working with the frantic efficiency of someone racing against time, she also activated her emergency beacon and began sending distress signals on every available frequency, knowing that conventional rescue would take far too long to save the woman's life. Her satellite communication equipment transmitted coordinates to park authorities, but the response time would be measured in hours rather than the minutes that remained. As she continued her desperate calls into the forest, something unprecedented began to happen. Through the dense jungle came the sound of massive bodies moving through vegetation with purpose and speed that suggested elephants responding to genuine emergency rather than casual foraging behavior. The sounds were getting closer rapidly, indicating that something had triggered the protective instincts of the family she had been studying. Dr. Rajapaksa's heart raced with both hope and terror as she realized that her desperate gamble might actually be working. The approaching elephants represented both potential salvation and additional danger. Wild elephants protecting their territory could be as deadly as the pythons, especially if they perceived humans as threats rather than victims needing assistance. The breakthrough moment came when she heard the distinctive rumbling vocalizations of Sri, the matriarch whose voice she had learned to recognize through years of patient observation. The massive elephant was approaching the clearing with her family, their movements suggesting they had interpreted Dr. Rajapaksa's calls as genuine distress signals from a creature they had learned to associate with protection rather than threat. But what would happen when a protective elephant matriarch encountered pythons attacking a human remained completely unpredictable and potentially catastrophic for everyone involved. When Sri emerged at the edge of the rocky clearing with her family positioned behind her, what followed defied every principle of wildlife behavior Dr. Rajapaksa had studied throughout her career. The massive matriarch's initial assessment of the scene was swift and decisive. Her intelligent eyes took in the trapped woman, the constricting pythons, and Dr. Rajapaksa's obvious distress with analytical precision that suggested she understood exactly what was happening. Instead of the territorial aggression or cautious retreat expected from wild elephants encountering snakes and humans, Sri displayed behavior that challenged fundamental assumptions about interspecies empathy. The magnificent matriarch approached the clearing with deliberate caution, her massive trunk extended to test air currents while her experienced eyes calculated the tactical situation with remarkable intelligence. Dr. Rajapaksa quickly contacted park authorities using her emergency communication equipment, reporting the location and requesting immediate medical backup for what was about to become either a miraculous rescue or a tragic confrontation between multiple dangerous species. Her voice carried both hope and terror as she realized that conventional wildlife protocols had no framework for the unprecedented situation unfolding before her. But what happened next would challenge every scientific understanding of elephant psychology and moral complexity. Rather than viewing the pythons as natural predators deserving respect, Sri seemed to assess them as threats to an innocent creature requiring immediate intervention. Her behavior suggested she recognized the woman's distress as genuine suffering that demanded action rather than territorial avoidance. The critical moment arrived when Sri began moving deliberately toward the pythons with her trunk extended and her massive frame positioned for maximum intimidation. The serpents, faced with a 4-ton elephant displaying clear aggressive intent, found their tactical advantage suddenly neutralized by an opponent whose sheer size and determination transcended normal predator-prey relationships. Young Kira and elderly Mala positioned themselves strategically around the clearing's perimeter, creating a coordinated formation that suggested the entire family understood they were participating in a rescue operation rather than territorial defense. Their synchronized movements displayed intelligence and empathy that left Dr. Rajapaksa speechless with amazement. As Sri prepared for direct confrontation with predators that could potentially injure her family, the magnitude of her sacrifice became clear. She was risking everything to save a creature she had no evolutionary obligation to protect. What unfolded next would be remembered as one of the most heartbreaking displays of interspecies sacrifice ever witnessed. Sri approached the pythons with deliberate courage, using her massive trunk to carefully grasp the first serpent's body while avoiding the trapped woman. The python's defensive strikes proved futile against the elephant's thick hide, as Sri methodically began unwinding its coils. But the second python, sensing threat, tightened its grip fatally around the woman's chest. In that critical moment, Sri made a decision that would break every heart that witnessed it. She positioned her own massive body between the striking serpent and the dying woman, absorbing the python's venomous defensive bite directly into her trunk. The magnificent matriarch continued her rescue despite the spreading venom, using her remaining strength to remove both pythons and gently lift the unconscious woman to safety. As park rangers arrived with medical equipment, Sri collapsed from the python's toxins, her sacrifice having saved a stranger's life at the ultimate cost. Kira and Mala surrounded their dying matriarch, their mournful calls echoing across the forest as they realized their beloved leader had given everything to protect someone she had never met. Dr. Rajapaksa wept as she watched the family's grief, knowing she had witnessed love in its purest, most selfless form. Sri's final act was reaching toward the rescued woman with her trunk, as if ensuring her sacrifice had meaning. In the aftermath of Sri's heartbreaking sacrifice, the rescued woman, Emma Thompson, a wildlife photographer from Australia, made a full recovery and dedicated her life to elephant conservation in Sri's memory. Her photographs from that day became powerful evidence of interspecies love that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about animal consciousness and moral capacity. Dr. Rajapaksa's documentation of Sri's sacrifice sparked international research into elephant emotional intelligence and empathy. The matriarch's willingness to absorb fatal venom to save a stranger became groundbreaking evidence of altruistic behavior that forced researchers to reconsider the depths of animal compassion. Most remarkably, Kira stepped into her mother's role with wisdom beyond her years, leading the family with the same protective instincts Sri had demonstrated. The young elephant seemed to understand that her mother's sacrifice represented the highest form of love, protecting the innocent regardless of species boundaries. Today, a memorial stands in Yala National Park honoring Sri's sacrifice, while Emma's foundation continues funding elephant protection programs worldwide. Their story serves as a heartbreaking reminder that love knows no evolutionary boundaries, and that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism come from creatures whose capacity for selfless sacrifice rivals anything humanity has ever achieved. In Sri Lanka's ancient forests, where one elephant's love broke every heart that witnessed it, Sri's legacy continues inspiring conservation efforts that honor her ultimate sacrifice. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.